You're listening to the Alpha's love stories, romantic audiobooks that will make your heart race. Don't forget to subscribe for more enchanting love tales. The wind didn't just blow that night, it screamed. It was a sound that tore through the very soul of the territory. A relentless, icy shriek that promised nothing but numbness and oblivion. In a forgotten corner of the vast Shadow Fang Pack lands, that wind found its way through every crack and gap in a small, rotting wooden shed inside. A young woman named Ilara pulled a threadbare, mildewed blanket tighter around her trembling shoulders. It was a pathetic shield against the cold that gnawed at her bones. She was the pack's ghost, an omega with no wolf spirit to call her own. A silent servant meant to be unseen and unheard. While Alpha Brutus and his family slept on silk sheets in the distant, glowing mansion on the hill, Ilara's world was this drafty prison. A sharp, invasive spike of pain lanced through her skull. The mental link, it was never gentle, never kind. Alpha Brutus's voice grated in her mind like stones grinding together. Ilara, the main house now. The pipes in the west wing have burst. Luna Cordelia is complaining about the noise. Ilara looked down at her own hands, raw and bleeding from scrubbing the great hall floors with harsh lye soap just hours before. Her voice was a timid whisper lost in the storm's rage. Alpha, the blizzard, the news says it's a whiteout. It's not safe. Did I ask for a weather report, you useless creature? His mental roar made her whimper. If you are not here in 5 minutes, you can forget your rations for the next month. Starve for all I care. The link severed, leaving a throbbing silence in its wake. Ilara swallowed a sob. She had no choice. No wolf meant no rights. No rights meant she was less than the dirt beneath their boots. Wrapping tattered burlap sacks around her worn boots, she took a deep, shuddering breath and pushed against the shed door. The fury of the storm hit her like a physical wall, stealing her breath and knocking her back a step. The world was a swirling, blinding chaos of white. The lights of the main house, her beacon, were completely swallowed by the maelstrom. Fear, cold and sharp, coiled in her stomach. But the fear of Brutus's punishment was greater. She lowered her head and plunged into the waist-deep snow. Every step was agony, the cold was a living thing, biting through her thin clothes, searing her lungs with each gasp. By the time the dark shape of the mansion loomed out of the whiteness, her tears were freezing on her cheeks. She stumbled to the grand oak servant's entrance and pounded a numb fist against the wood. The door swung open, revealing not a servant but Selene. The Alpha's daughter, she was wrapped in a plush velvet robe, holding a steaming mug that smelled of rich chocolate and cinnamon. Her pretty face twisted into a sneer of pure disgust. "You're late," Selene drawled, her voice sweet as poisoned honey. "Daddy already used his alpha strength to fix the pipes. You really are utterly pointless, please." Ilara chattered, her teeth clacking together so violently she could barely speak. "Jay, just let me warm up for a moment, 10 minutes. I can't feel my feet." Selene's laugh was a cruel, tinkling sound that cut deeper than the cold, and let you track slush and filth on my clean floors. I think not, go back to your hole, little mouse. Try not to freeze solid on the way. The door slammed in Alara's face with a finality that echoed in the marrow of her bones. She stood there stunned. They had sent her out to die. The realization was a colder chill than any blizzard. Turning, she faced the white void once more. The journey back was a blur of disorientation and terror. She fell and fell again, the ice scraping her skin. She lost the path completely, stumbling blindly until the dark line of the frozen forest appeared through the driving snow. That's when she heard it, not the wind, a whimper. Soft, pained, and utterly desperate, then another. And another, a chorus of misery. Alara froze. Her survival instinct screaming at her to run. To find shelter, to save herself. But the sound came again, a plea from the darkness. Against every shred of self-preservation. She turned toward the sound, pushing through a deep drift near the frozen riverbank. What she saw stole the little breath she had left, not one, not two, but over 20 massive wolves were half buried in a snowdrift. They were enormous, powerful beasts, but now they were just shivering mounds of ice-matted fur. Their breathing shallow, their eyes closed. They were dying, the largest of them. A colossal animal with fur as black as midnight and a single, striking silver streak across his muzzle lifted his head. His eyes a breathtaking intelligent amber. Locked onto hers, he didn't growl, he just looked at her. And in that look, Alara saw a silent, profound plea. She looked back at the distant, dark speck of her shed. She looked at the dying wolves. She was nobody, she was weak. She had nothing. But she knew what it was to be left in the cold. Okay. And she whispered to the windtoe, the wolvesto herself. "'Kay. You're coming with me," dragging even one of the giant. Ice-laden wolves was like trying to move a mountain. For Alara, small, malnourished human with no strength but that of sheer desperation. The task was impossible, yet she began. She started with the smallest, a young wolf with gray fur. Its body limp, grunting, she grabbed it by the scruff. Her raw hands screaming in protest and pulled. It was like dragging a sack of stones. "Please." And she begged the cold air, "Please, just a little further." Miraculously, some of the wolves that could still move seemed to understand. They staggered to their feet, their legs trembling, and leaned their heavy, ice-crusted bodies against her for support, their trust. In this moment of utter vulnerability, broke something open inside her. She wasn't alone. For the ones who couldn't Rysish found an old, torn tarp used for gathering firewood. She rolled them onto Iton, agonizing inch at a time, and pulled. The journey of 50 yards became an epic trek that spanned hours. The world narrowed to the howling wind, the burning in her lungs, and the monumental weight of life she was trying to save. By the time she dragged the last wolf, the immense black one with the silver streak, across the shed's threshold, Alara collapsed. She lay on the rough wooden planks, gasping her body a single, unified ache. The shed was packed, a living, breathing. shivering mass of fur and frost. The air grew thick with the smell of wet wolf and icy breath. But they were inside, they were out of the killing wind. Ilara forced herself to stand, her legs wobbling. Heat, she muttered, her voice a ragged scrape. We need heat. In the corner sat her small, cast-iron stove. Beside it was a pitiful stack of split logs, her carefully rationed supply for the next week. If she burned them all tonight, she would face the freezing days ahead with nothing. She looked at the wolves, at their closed eyes and shallow breaths, at the black wolf watching her with that intense, knowing gaze. She didn't hesitate. She shoved every single log into the belly of the stove and lit the kindling. The fire caught crackling to life, painting the shed walls with dancing orange light. But the draft whistled through the gaps, stealing the precious warmth. It wasn't enough. Her eyes scanned her meager possessions. A single wooden chair, a rickety table. They were all she had. With a resolve that felt both terrible and right, she grabbed the rusty hatchet from its hook. With a cry that was part effort, part grief, she brought it down on the chair, smashing it to splinters. Then the table, she fed the bones of her home into the fire. The stove roared, its iron sides glowing a comforting cherry red. A fragile wave of warmth began to push back the deep cold. The wolves' violent shivering lessened just a fraction. But warmth alone wouldn't save them. They needed strength. They needed fuel. Ilara went to a small, dented cooler in the corner. From it, she pulled her most precious possession, a tough, salted slab of venison, scavenged from the pack kitchen's garbage and carefully hoarded to last her for days. Her stomach cramped with hunger at the sight of it. She took her knife without a second thought. She began to slice the meat into strips. 25 strips, I'm sorry it's not more. As she whispered, moving among them. I'm sorry it's not better, she hand-fed each wolf. Some were too weak to chew. So she tenderly mashed the meat with a clean stone and let them lick the paste from her palm. When she reached the great black wolf, she offered him the largest piece. He sniffed it, then gently nudged her hand back toward her with his massive nose. A sob caught in Ilara's throat. No, she said, fresh tears tracking through the dirt on her face. You need it, please, you have to live. He held her gaze for a long moment, then slowly, carefully took the meat from her hand. His touch was gentle. The fire crackled, the storm screamed its fury outside, piling snow against the walls, sealing them in their fragile cocoon. Ilara had no furniture left to sit on. The wolves covered every inch of floor, exhaustion pulling her under. She simply curled up in the only space left, a small hollow in the center of the pack. Immediately, the wolves shifted around her. The great black wolf moved first, curling his immense body around her back, blocking the draft from the door. A sleek, silvery female rested her head gently on Ilara's legs. Another pressed close to her side. They enveloped her in a living fortress of fur and shared breath. For the first time in her entire lonely life, Ilara felt a profound, unshakable sense of safety. She was not a burden here, she was the center, she was part of something. Good night, she whispered into the dark. Warm fur, her fingers tangling gently in it. Hold on until morning. She fell into a deep, dreamless sleep, completely unaware that the wolf she used as a pillow was not sleeping. His amber eyes were open, watchful, fixed on the shed door with the predatory focus of a royal guard protecting his most vital charge. Ilara woke to a profound silence. It was the absence of sound that pulled her from sleep. The relentless howl of the blizzard was gone. A weak, grayish light filtered through the cracks in the shed walls. And she was cold, dreadfully cold. The fire had died hours ago, leaving only cold ash in the stove. She shot up, panic seizing her heart. Hello. The shed was empty. The massive, comforting bodies were gone. Not a single wolf remained. No indentation in the straw, not even a stray tuft of fur. It was as if the previous night had been a desperate, beautiful dream born of cold and hunger. A crushing sense of loss sharper than the morning chill hollowed her out. Had she imagined it all? Had they simply left when the storm passed? Then her eyes caught a glint on the floorboards where the black wolf had lain. It wasn't a dream, a dagger. She knelt, her fingers trembling as she picked it up. It was unlike any weapon she had ever seen. The blade was crafted from a dark, shimmering metal that seemed to drink the light. Yet its edge gleamed with a lethal sharpness. The hilt was wrapped in black leather and set with a single large stone the color of a stormy sky, a sapphire that held depths within it. It was heavy, elegant, and utterly terrifying. Why would they leave this? A payment, a warning. Before she could begin to unravel the mystery, the ground began to tremble, thump, thump, thump. It was the rhythmic, powerful sound of heavy engines, many of them approaching fast. The silence of the snowy dawn was shattered. Ilara scrambled to the door, the dagger clutched tightly in her hand. She shoved it deep into the pocket of her oversized coat and peered outside. The world was a blinding blanket of pristine white, broken only by the dark line of the forest. But the peace was an illusion. Her gaze was drawn to the main pack house on the hill. A convoy was tearing up the long driveway, crushing the perfect snow. These were not delivery trucks or the sleek cars of visiting alphas. These were armored vehicles painted a matte, non-reflective black built like beasts of war. They bore no pack insignia, instead on each door, painted in a stark shimmering silver, was a symbol that made Ilara's blood run cold, a majestic wolf howling at a crescent moon that was cracked down the center. The royal crest, the personal emblem of Lycan King Kaelin Thorn and his infamous obsidian guard. Fear immediate and instinctive clamped around her throat. The king's guard never left the capital without grave reason. What catastrophe had brought them to the remote, insignificant Shadow Fang territory? She saw Alpha Brutus stumble out of the mansion's front doors, struggling into his formal Kothai's face pale with panic. Luna, Cordelia, and Selene followed, their expressions a mix of terror and a frantic, grasping ambition. Line up everyone now. Brutus's roar carried down the hill, thin and strained. Alara knew she had to be there. To be missing would be an offense punishable by lashings. Or worse, she began to run. Her legs still stiff and sore from the night's ordeal. Plunging through the deep snow toward the gathering pack. She slipped into the very back of the assembled crowd just as the light vehicle. A monstrous six-wheeled armored transport. Ground to a halt directly before the grand entrance. The air grew thick, suffocating under the weight of pure, unadulterated authority. Alpha Brutus bowed so low his nose nearly touched the snow. Your Majesty, this is an unparalleled honor. We were unprepared. Had we known a feast worthy of your stature. The door of the armored transport opened, a man descended. He was tall. So tall he seemed to dwarf the warriors who emerged behind him. His hair was the color of shadows. His shoulders broad under a long dark coat. But it was his presence that forced the entire pack to their knees. An aura of ancient commanding power radiated from him. A pressure that felt like the mountain itself had stepped onto their land. This was Lycan, King Kalen Thorn. He ignored Brutus completely, his Isa swirling. Impossible mix of storm gray and molten gold. Swept over the cowering pack members, he took a slow, deliberate breath as if tasting the very air. I am not here for your feasts, Brutus, the king said. His voice was a low rumble. Calm but carrying with the force of a rock slide. Then for a tribute, surely, Brutus stammered. Sweat gleaming on his forehead despite the cold. My daughter Selene, she is of age, a rare beauty. Selene stepped forward offering a practiced, fluttering curtsy, your Majesty, she breathed. King Kalen did not even glance at her. He walked past the Alpha and his family as if they were statues of no consequence. His boots crunched in the snow as he moved slowly down the lined rows of pack members. He was searching, his keen gaze scanned every face. His nostrils flaring slightly, Alara. At the very back among the other low-ranking Omegas. Tried to make herself invisible. She stared fixedly at her worn-wet boots. Her heart hammering against her ribs. She smelled of wood smoke, wet wool, and fear. She was utterly beneath notice. The king's steady footsteps stopped. He had reached the Omega line. The silence was absolute, freezing, then one more step. The crunch of snow directly in front of her. Alara's breath hitched. She could see the fine leather of his boots dusted with snow. Slowly, trembling, she forced her head to lift. King Kalen Thorn was looking down at her, his intense, dual-colored eyes held hers. Seeing past the dirt and the fear. He reached out, his hand large and capable. Gently he tipped her chin up with a single finger, his voice. When he spoke was softer, no meant only for her. Yet it echoed in the silent clearing. Tell me, he murmured. His thumb brushing a smudge of soot from her cheek with an astonishing tenderness. Did you sleep well last night, little one? Alara could only stare, her mind a perfect terrified blank. The king's touch was warm, his gaze piercing. His question made no sense. How could he know? Why would he care, my king? As she stammered, the words barely a whisper. A ghost of a smile touched Kaelin's lips, softening the hard lines of his face. "The venison," he said, his voice still low, intimate. "A touch salty, I must admit. But the fire was just right," the world tilted. "The shed, the meat. The splintered furniture fueling the flames," he knew. Alara's eyes widened in dawning. Impossible comprehension. She looked past the king to the man standing rigidly at his shoulder, a broad-shouldered warrior with a fierce scar cutting through his eyebrow. And his eyes, they were a familiar, intelligent amber. "You." Alara breathed truth crashing over her like a wave. "You were the wolves." King Kaelin did not confirm it aloud. He simply held her gaze high, his own filled with a profound, unreadable emotion. Then he turned, his movements swift and commanding. His voice, when he addressed the entire pack, was no longer soft, it was the voice of judgment. "Last night," he announced, the words ringing with absolute authority, "my personal guard and I were returning from a border dispute. We were ambushed by a coven of sorcerers. They hit us with a curse designed to bind our human forms, to trap us as wolves and leave us helpless against the elements. We were dying in that snow." He paused, letting the gravity of his statement sink in. Then he raised a hand and pointed. His finger aimed unerringly at Alara, who still knelt in the snow. "This girl," Kaelin declared, his voice gaining a thunderous quality, "this Omega. She found 25 strange, half-frozen beasts. She did not see a threat, she did not see a burden. She saw lives in need of saving." He took a step toward the trembling Alpha Brutus, his expression darkening into something truly fearsome. "And while she was burning her own bed to keep the royal bloodline warm." Kaelin's voice dropped to a deadly growl. "I saw how she lives, I saw the bruises on her arms. I saw the rot in the walls of her home." He spat the last word. The king's eyes began to glow, the gray and gold churning with power. "Commander Rylan," he barked. The scarred warrior, Commander Rylan, snapped to attention. "Oh yes, your majesty. Place Alpha Brutus and his immediate family under arrest. The charges are dereliction of duty-neglect of a pack member, and high treason for their treatment of the one who saved your king's life." "I know." The scream tore from Seleni's throat, high and shrill. "You can't, she's nothing. She's a filthy, wolfless creature, a rat." Kaelin turned his back on her, he focused entirely on Alara. With a fluid motion, unclasped the heavy, fur-lined cloak from his own shoulders, the dark fabric, lined with thick silvery fur, swept through the air before he draped it over Alara's small, shivering frame. It was impossibly heavy, impossibly warm, and smelled of pine forests and winter sky. It pooled around her feet, enveloping her completely. "She is not nothing," King Kaelin proclaimed, his voice now a clarion call that brooked no argument. "She is the only soul in this entire, miserable territory with the heart of a true alpha." He then extended his hand to her, not as a king to a subject, but as an equal. His palm was upturned, an offer. "Come, Alara, we have much to discuss, and I believe he added, and this time his smile was real, touching his eyes. I owe you a new table. The interior of the armored transport was a world of muted sound and controlled power. Ilara sat swamped in the king's cloak on a seat of soft black leather. King Kalen sat across from her, his large frame dominating the space. He was silent, studying a screen on the wall, his jaw tight. Commander Rylan sat beside him, occasionally glancing at Ilara with an expression of fierce loyalty. The vehicle began to move, the convoy carrying them away from Shadow Fang forever. Your Majesty, Rylan said, breaking the quiet. The prisoners are secure. Brutus is demanding his rights as an alpha. Kalen didn't look up. Brutus forfeited all rights when he condemned an innocent to a frozen shed. He will be held in the Citadel's black cells until the formal tribunal. He finally lifted his ice and they found Ilara, who was trying to shrink into the cloak. And the girl's injuries. Superficial frostnip, Majesty. Malnutrition is the greater concern. Kalen moved. In the confined space, his motion was startling. He shifted to sit beside Ilara, pulling a small white medical kit from a compartment. Ilara flinched, pressing herself against the cold wall. I am not going to hurt you, Ilara, Kalen said, his voice a low, soothing rumble. He took her hand, his touch firm yet infinitely gentle. Her hand looked like a child's in his, pale and dotted with angry red cuts from the firewood. These need to be cleaned. Infection is a stealthy enemy. He unscrewed a bottle, the sharp, clean scent of antiseptic filling the air. He dabbed a pad against her broken skin. Ilara watched, mesmerized and confused, as the most powerful Lycan in the nation tended to her wounds. Why? The question slipped out, frail and bewildered. Why what? Kalen asked, not looking up from his task. Why are you doing this for me? I'm broken. The law says, the law, Kalen interrupted, his voice hardening, is written by small-minded men to protect their own power. Last night, 25 of my strongest warriors were helpless. You were not, you fought for us. That is not the mark of an Omega. That is the mark of a protector, that is the mark of a queen. He finished bandaging her hand, his fingers lingering for a moment. Because of your courage, you will never be cold again. You will never be hungry again. You will never be alone again, this I swear to you. Ilara felt a hot tear escape, tracing a path through the grime on her cheek. She didn't understand this new world, this staggering kindness. She only knew the shed was behind her and a terrifying, magnificent future lay ahead. The transport slowed. Commander Rylan looked out the tinted window. We are home, Your Majesty, the Onyx Citadel. Ilara looked out and her breath caught. They weren't approaching a house or even a palace. They were entering a fortress carved into the side of a mountain. Towers of gleaming black stone pierced the gray sky, surrounded by walls that seemed to touch the clouds. As the massive gates swung open, she saw them, hundreds of people lining the streets, all of them bowing deeply silently as the convoy passed. They know, Rylan said quietly, checking a device. The news has spread. The king and his guards saved from the storm. The images are everywhere. Images, Alara whispered. My body camera, Kaelin explained simply. It records everything, the council has seen it. The world has seen you pull me from the snow. The vehicle stopped before a breathtaking staircase of onyx stone. Guards in immaculate black and silver uniforms opened the doors. King Kaelin emerged first, a figure of absolute command. He turned and once more offered his hand to Alara. She hesitated, acutely aware of her muddy boots. Her torn clothes, overwhelming grandeur. Alara, Kaelin said, his voice leaving no room for doubt. You wear the king's cloak, that makes you royalty here. Take my hand, swallowing her fear. Alara placed her small, bandaged hand in his. He pulled her out into the cold. Thin mountain errand immediately drew her close to his side. His arm a solid bar of support around her. At the top of the stairs, a severe-looking woman with steel-gray hair pulled into a flawless knot awaited them. She wore a tailored suit that screamed authority. Your Majesty, she said, bowing precisely. Her sharp eyes flicked over Alara, and a flash of icy assessment was there and gone in an instant. The royal suite is prepared for you. We have placed the girl in the adequate guest quarters in the south wing. No, Kaelin said, the single word was flat, final. The woman, Lady Seraphine, blinked. Sire. The south wing is perfectly suitable for a guest. Alara will stay in the amber suite, in the royal wing. Next to my own chambers. Lady Seraphine's composure cracked. A faint, incredulous tension tightened her mouth. The royal wing is for family and potential mates. Your Majesty, surely the guest, Lady Seraphine. Kaelin's voice dropped, becoming dangerously quiet. If you wish to continue serving this court, you will remember your place. Alara is under my personal protection. She goes where I go. Is that understood? Lady Seraphine paled, dipping into another, deeper bow. Perfectly, Your Majesty. Kaelin looked down at Alara, his expression shifting from fearsome ruler to something warmer. Let's get you real food, he said, and then you can rest. As they climbed the stairs, Alara felt the weight of countless eyes upon her. She felt the safety of Kaelin's grip, but she also felt the new, chilling danger in Lady Seraphine's cold, obedient smile. The storm had passed, but a different kind of ice had just settled into the heart of the onyx citadel. The bath was a sin, a vast sunken pool of marble, filled with steaming water that smelled of jasmine and rare mountain herbs. Alara sank into it, the heat seeping into bones that had forgotten what true warmth felt like. Too silent. Efficient maids had scrubbed the grime of a lifetime from her skin, washed her hair until it shone like dark river stone, and applied a cool tingling salve to her frost-nipped toes. Clean, she was truly, utterly clean. She stepped out, wrapping herself in a robe of impossibly soft cream silk, and faced the full-length mirror. A stranger looked back. Her skin, freed from its layer of dirt, was pale and bore the faint silver trails of old, faded scars across her back, a permanent record of Seleni's riding crop. Her frame was painfully thin, her ribs starkly visible. But her eyes, they were different, still wide with fear. But beneath thought a new fragile light of wonder glimmered. A soft knock sounded. "Enter," Alara called, her voice still shy. It was not a maid. A kind-faced man with spectacles and a gentle demeanor entered, carrying a sleek medical case. "Miss Alara," he said with a small, respectful bow, "I am Dr. Aris, the royal physician. His Majesty is deeply concerned for your health. He has asked for a full examination." Alara nodded, sitting in a plush chair. "All right. I'm used to less." "No one should be used to starvation, Doctor," Aris said, his voice gentle but firm. He took her arm, his touch professional. "A small blood sample to check your levels." The needle prick was nothing, Doctor. Aris filled 3 small vials with her blood. He slotted one into a portable analyzer. It hummed softly. He frowned at the screen. "A severe iron deficiency, as expected. Vitamin D practically non-existent. We can correct this." The machine beeped, a sharp, discordant sound. A red light flashed. Dr. Aris's frown deepened. "How peculiar, it indicates a species mismatch." He took the second vial, his movements now precise, and inserted it into a different, more complex machine. This beep was louder, more urgent, Doctor. Aris removed his spectacles, wiped them, and looked from the screen to Alara and back again. His hands began to tremble. "Miss Alara," he whispered, his voice filled with awe. "You told them you have no wolf." "I don't," she said, confusion knotting her stomach. "I've never shifted. I'm 22. It's impossible." "You don't have a common wolf, Doctor." Aris breathed, turning the screen toward her. The image showed a twisting, glowing strand. It wasn't the double helix of human DNA, nor the triple helix of a Lycan. It was a quadruple helix. Spirals of gold and silver light intertwined, pulsing with a slow, powerful rhythm. This is ancient Lycan blood," the doctor stammered. "A primal strain, the markers here. And here, this is the lineage of the Valkyrie, the warrior priestesses of the first moon. They were thought extinct for 5 centuries." Alara stared, the words washing over her like a dream. "Valkyrie, that's a children's story." "It is our history," Dr. Aris insisted, his eyes wide. "Your wolf isn't missing, child, she is bound. Sealed away by a magical lock placed on your very soul when you were just an infant. A lock powerful enough to have killed anyone of lesser blood." He leaned forward, his voice dropping to a hushed tone. "Your parents, did you know them? They died. A carriage accident when I was 2, the pack took me in." Even as she said it, doubt dark and colden coiled in her mind. "Or," Dr. Aris whispered, "they hid you. And someone found you and tried to bury what you are forever." Before the staggering truth could settle, the chamber door swung open without ceremony. Lady Seraphine stood there, her posture rigid. 2 stone-faced guards flanking her. "Dr. Aris," she said, her voice smooth as polished ice. "The king requires your immediate presence in the war room." A matter concerning the prisoner Brutus. I am in the middle of a critical examination, my lady, doctor. Aris protested, subtly shifting his body to block the screen. Now, doctor. The command was absolute, doctor. Aris shot Alara a look of profound apology and urgency. With a deft motion, tapped the screen, clearing the data. But not before slipping a tiny silver data chip into the palm of his hand and then into his pocket. I will return Miss Alara, he promised and hurried out. Lady Seraphine did not follow him. She stepped into the room. And the guards closed the door, standing before it like statues. The atmosphere turned frigid, so Seraphine said, circling Alara like a hawk surveying a mouse. The little stray cleans up acceptably. The king is quite taken with his new pet project. Alara tightened the robe around herself. He has been kind. Kindness is a luxury kings can seldom afford. Seraphine mused at her smile, not reaching her cold eyes. He is sentimental now, you saved his guard. It's a charming story, but stories end. As she stopped in front of Alara, King Kalen needs a queen. A true queen, he is already betrothed. A political alliance with the Southern Sun Pack has been in negotiation for years. The words were a physical blow. He hasn't mentioned that. Of course he hasn't, Seraphine scoffed. Why spoil the fantasy? You are a distraction, Alara. A brave little urchin who warmed his feet. Do not mistake gratitude for destiny. You do not belong. Here, the king asked me to stay, Alara said, forcing her voice not to tremble. The king is confused by a novel emotion, Seraphine hissed, leaning in. Her scent was of frost and expensive, bitter perfume. I maintain the purity of the royal bloodline. I ensure the strength of the throne. We cannot have a mongrel muddying centuries of lineage. As she pulled a slip of crisp paper from her jacket. This is a bank draft, 1 million units, take it. Disappear tonight, Alara looked at the draft. It was more money than she could conceive. It was freedom, safety, a life of her own. Her fingers itched to take it. Then she remembered the black wolf Kalen, curling around her in the shed. She remembered the look in his eyes when he draped his cloak over her, not pity, but recognition. She took the paper. And slowly, deliberately, she tore it in half. I don't want your money, Alara said, letting the pieces flutter to the floor. If the king wishes me to leave, he will tell me himself. Lady Seraphine's pleasant mask shattered. Ugly rage contorted her features. You foolish, sentimental child. You think stone walls make you safe. Accidents happen in palaces every day, maids fall. Meals are misprepared. As she gave a slight nod to the guards. Teach her the consequences of poor manners. Nothing permanent, just enough discouragement. The guards stepped forward, their expressions blank, their hands curling into fists. Alara backed away, her heart hammering against her ribs. Stay back, the first guard lunged. Alara ducked, her survival instincts screaming. She scrambled over the large bed, grabbing a heavy crystal candlestick from the nightstand. She threw it. It struck the guard's shoulder with a solid thunk, making him grunt and stagger. Useless fools, subdue her. Seraphine shrieked. The second guard was faster. He caught Alara by her long damp hair, yanking her backward. Pain exploded across her scalp. He threw her to the thick carpet, the impact driving the air from her lungs. Hold her, Seraphine commanded, pulling a small, pre-filled syringe from her jacket. The liquid inside was a sickly, venomous green. A mild toxin, wolf's bane and nightshade. It won't kill you, it will just make you wish you were dead. The guard pinned Alara's arms, the other held her legs. She was trapped. Seraphine uncapped the needle, the point glinting in the lamplight as she brought it toward Alara's exposed neck. Terror, pure and absolute, flooded Alara's veins. This was it, not the cold but poison in a gilded room. Kaelin, her mind screamed, a silent, desperate cry. And deep within her chest, where a hollow emptiness had always resided, something broke. It was a soundless, seismic snap, the shattering of an ancient golden lock. A surge of power hotter than the sun, older than the mountains, erupted from her core. Her eyes flew open. They were no longer browns. They were blazing, incandescent white. Get off. The voice was not her own. It was a chorus, a command woven from thunder and starlight. A shockwave of pure, concussive force blasted outward from her body. The guards were lifted and thrown like rag dolls, crashing into the far wall with sickening crunches before slumping. Unconscious, Lady Seraphine was hurled across the room, smashing into the dressing table. Bottles of perfume shattering around her. Alara stood. Energy crackled over her skin like lightning. She felt immense, powerful, terrifying. She looked at her hands. They were glowing with a soft, white gold light. At that exact moment, the double doors to the chamber exploded inward. Torn from their hinges, King Kaelin stood in the wreckage. His eyes completely black, his canines extended. A roar of primal fury dying in his throat as he took in the scene. He saw his guards unconscious. He saw Seraphine bleeding amidst the broken glass. And he saw Alara glowing like a fallen star, radiating an ancient, majestic power he had only ever read about in myths. His fury vanished, replaced by stunned, reverent awe. He fell to one knee, his head bowing instinctively. "A Valkyrie," he breathed. The words filled with shock and a dawning impossible joy. "My Luna." The silence in the shattered chamber was deafening, thick with the scent of ozone-broken, perfumined fear. Alara stood in the center, the radiant glow around her skin slowly fading like the last embers of a great fire. She felt drained, colossal and terribly fragile all at once. The power receded, leaving a hollow ache and the chilling memory of its wrath. King Kaelin remained on one knee, his head bowed. But his eyes, now returned to their stormy gray gold, were fixed on her with an expression of such profound reverence it stole her breath. Lady Seraphine stirred amidst the wreckage of the vanity, pushing herself up with a pained groan. A shard of glass was embedded in her palm, and a trickle of blood marred her perfect cheek. But her eyes were not on her injuries. They were locked on Alara with a mixture of terror and a blazing, triumphant hatred, witchcraft. The accusation tore from Seraphine's throat. Raw and venomous, you see it, your majesty. That was no shift, that was sorcery, dark magic. She struggled to her feet. Using the broken table for support, Omegas do not glow. Lycans do not blast energy from their hands. She is an abomination. A necromancer sent to poison your court. The word necromancer hung in the air like a death sentence. In the Lycan world, witchcraft was the ultimate heresy. A corruption of natural law punishable by burning. Kalen rose slowly to his feet. His movement fluid and predatory. He positioned himself subtly between Alara and Seraphine. You dare speak of poison after what you just attempted. His voice was a low, dangerous vibration. I felt her distress, I felt the seal break. She is a Valkyrie. The blood of the first moon runs in her veins. Valkyries are a myth. Seraphine shrieked, her composure utterly gone. A story to frighten pups. She is a spy or a mutant or a demon, look at the evidence. She assaulted your guards with unnatural force. The sound of rushing footsteps echoed in the hallway. Commander Rylan burst into the room. A dozen royal guards at his back, their weapons drawn. Right behind them came 3 elderly men draped in simple gray robes, the High Council. Their leader, Elder Magnus, had a face like carved granite and eyes like chips of flint. What is the meaning of this violence within the royal wing? Elder Magnus's voice was thin and sharp as a whip crack. His gaze swept over the unconscious guards. The bleeding Lady Seraphine finally settled on Alara, who was now swaying, her borrowed strength spent. She attacked me, Seraphine cried, pointing a trembling, bloody finger. I discovered her stealing royal jewels. When I confronted her, she used dark arts to defend herself. She is a witch sent to undermine the throne. Liar, Kalen growled, the sound shaking the very air. She is my fated mate, I felt her soul cry out. I felt the ancient bond snap into place the moment her power awakened. Elder Magnus's icy eyes narrowed. A fated mate who is an unshifted Omega from a disgraced pack. A convenient story, your majesty. He took a step closer, his nostrils flaring. She carries no scent of wolf, Kalen. She smells of lightning and scorched earth. The stench of forbidden magic. Her wolf was bound by a magical seal. Kalen's patience was a fraying thread, doctor. Aris confirmed it, she carries the Valkyrie lineage. Or so she made him believe, Seraphine interjected. Her voice dripping with false pity. Witches are masters of illusion. Of tampering with minds and machines. If she is truly a Lycan, let her prove it, let her shift. Right now, all eyes turn to Alara. The pressure was a physical weight crushing her. She looked at Kalen, desperation in her eyes. I don't know how, she whispered, her voice breaking. It burns, it's all fire and noise inside, I caw. Elder Magnus nodded slowly. As if a grim theory had been confirmed, if she cannot shift. She cannot be recognized as Lycanlit alone as Luna. And if she has used dark magic to harm a high noble of the court, he let the sentence hang. Its conclusion obvious: execution. You will not touch her. Kaelin's snarl led his own power beginning to rise. A dark aura gathering around him, the guards tensed, caught between their king and the council's authority. Stop. Alara's voice, though weak, cut through the tension. She pushed away from Kaelin's supportive arm and faced Elder Magnus directly. She was small-dressed in a simple robe, but she held her chin high. I am not a witch. I don't understand what I am, but I know I am not evil. Magnus studied her, his expression unreadable. There is one way to determine the truth of your nature, Regal. A way that bypasses the need for a shift. That reveals the essence of the blood itself. A cold dread seeped into Kaelin's features. No, Magnus. The moonstone is too dangerous. If she is weakened, if the poison, the moonstone trial. Elder Magnus declared, ignoring the king. If your blood is true Lycan, noble or common, Valkyrie or not, the sacred stone will sing in harmony with it. If you are human or witch, or any manner of false being, the stone will burn you to ash. The finality in his voice was absolute. The trial was not a request, it was a decree. Ilara looked at the hard faces of the council. At Seraphine's triumphant sneer and finally at Kaelin. His face was a mask of anguish and fury. He was ready to fight his entire courto, start a war for her. She could not let him tear his kingdom apart. She took a deep, shuddering breath, gathering the last dregs of her courage. I will do it, she said, her voice clear and steady in the ruined room. Kaelin reached for her. Ilara, you don't have to. I do, she interrupted, meeting his gaze. For you, for us. For the truth, Elder Magnus gave a slow, approving nod. So be it. The trial will be held at dusk in the grand courtyard. The entire court will bear witness. His eyes locked with Kaelin's. Prepare your guest. As the council turned to leave, Seraphine shot Ilara a look of pure gloating malice. You've just signed your own death warrant. Her eyes seemed to say. Alone with Kaelin and Rylan amidst the wreckage. Ilara's bravery wavered, her legs gave out. But Kaelin was there, catching her, holding her close. Why did you agree? He murmured into her hair, his voice thick with fear. The moonstone, it is merciless. Because I trust what I feel, she whispered, leaning into his solid strength. And I felt something break inside me, Kaelin. Something real, something yours. He held her tighter, a promise and a prayer in his embrace. The battle in the chamber was over, the battle for her life, for their future, would be decided under the watching moon in just a few hours' time. Dusk painted the sky in bruised shades of violet and charcoal as the entire onyx citadel gathered in the immense grand courtyard. The palpable, electrified tension hung in the cold mountain air. Nobles in furs and silk warriors in polished armor. Servants who had slipped away from their duties all stood in a vast, silent semicircle. Their breaths fogged in the fading light. 1,000 silent prayers or curses in the very center. atop a raised dais of black volcanic rock set the moonstone. It was not beautiful, it was a rough, jagged crystal about the size of a human head. Its surface a dull lifeless gray like a dead star. It seemed to absorb the twilight, radiating a cold that had nothing to do with the temperature. Alara stood at the edge of the stone pathway leading to the dais. She wore a plain dress of undyed linen. As was required for the trial, no symbols, no protections. Just the truth of the soul. King Kaelan stood rigidly a few paces behind her, flanked by Commander Rylan and a line of his most loyal guards. His face was a mask of imperial control, but his knuckles were white where he clenched his fists. Lady Seraphine stood prominently with the council. Her wound neatly bandaged, a look of serene, venomous certainty on her face. Elder Magnus stepped forward, his gray robes whispering against the stone, his voice amplified by the courtyard's acoustics, rang out flat and cold. The moonstone does not lie. It was born of the first Lycan's tear under the primal moon. It knows the song of our blood and rejects all false harmonies. The accused, Alara of Shadow Fang, will approach. Every eye followed her as she took the first step. The walk to the dais felt endless, a march to the gallows. She could feel Kaelan's gaze burning into her back, a beacon of warmth in the freezing ritual. She could feel Seraphine's icy glow. She could feel the doubt, the fear, the hungry curiosity of the crowd. She reached the dais. The moonstone hummed, a subaudible vibration that made her teeth ache and her bones feel brittle. Place both palms upon the stone, Magnus intoned. Submit your essence to its judgment. Alara looked back once. She met Kaelan's eyes in them. She saw not just a king, but a man staring into the precipice of his own devastation. She gave him the smallest, bravest nod she could muster. Then she turned, took a final breath, and pressed her hands flat against the moonstone's surface. For one heartbeat, two, nothing, then the pain began. It was not fire, it was absolute cosmic cold. A freezing agony that shot from the stone up her arms, seizing her muscles, crawling into her veins. Seeking her heart, it was the cold of the void between stars. The cold of true death. Her blood seemed to turn to slush in her vessels. Her scream was trapped in her frozen throat. The stone turned a deep, lightless black. A murmur rippled through the crowd. A witch. Someone hissed, "See, the stone sees her corruption." Seraphine's smile was a grim slash of victory. She burns. Let the purge be swift, Alara. Kaelan's roar was pure anguish, and he took a step forward, only to be physically restrained by Rylan and two other guards. Wait, Rylan hissed, his own eyes wide. Look. The blackness in the stone wasn't darkness. It was a void, a canvas of nothingness waiting to be filled. From the very center of the dead stone, a single hairline crack appeared, glowing with a fierce silver light. Crack, another crack, crack, crack. A spiderweb of brilliant light raced across the moonstone's surface. Then it exploded, not into shards but into rays of pure, prismatic brilliance, beams of silver gold. and celestial blue erupted, shooting skyward, swirling around Alara like a tornado of starlight. The terrible cold shattered, replaced by a searing, glorious warmth that poured into her through her. The pain vanished, in its place was a symphony. A song of ancient power, off wings and moonlight and endless howling winds. It was her song. Alara threw her head back, her back arching not in agony but in ecstatic release. A cry tore from her lips, not a scream but a note of pure, clear power. The sound of changing bone filled the courtyard, but it was not the sickening snap of breakage. It was the resonant sound of transformation, of becoming. She fell to her knees, her body rippling, expanding, fur white as freshly fallen snow and glowing with its own soft light, burst from her skin. Her face elongated into a majestic muzzle. Her hands became massive paws tipped with claws like polished silver. In a flash of blinding, beautiful light, the girl was gone. Standing on the dais was a wolf, but no ordinary wolf. She was enormous, rivaling Kaelin's own legendary beast in size. Her fur was a cascade of luminous white tanned on her forehead. Etched in fur of purest silver was an unmistakable symbol, a crescent moon cradling a downward-pointed sword. The mark of the Valkyrie, the great white wolf, shook herself, and sparks of moonlit energy cascaded from her coat. She turned her magnificent head, her eyes now pools of radiant liquid gold, and swept her gaze across the stunned silent crowd. Then she lifted her muzzle to the emerging first stars and howled. It was a sound that had been absent from the world for 500 years. It was beauty and terror, a call to battle and a song of healing. It resonated in the stone of the courtyard, in the chest of every Lycan present. It was the sound of a queen reclaiming her throne. The force of it shattered every remaining window in the courtyard towers. And as the last note faded into the mountains, every single Lycan, from the lowest servant to Elder Magnus himself, dropped to their knees, pressing their foreheads to the cold stone in utter, terrified submission. King Kaelin was the first to look up, tears streaking unashamedly down his face. He did not kneel to a subject. He knelt to his equal, to his destiny. "My Luna," he breathed, the words of vow heard by all. The moonstone, its purpose fulfilled, sat on the dais, now clear as crystal and glowing with a gentle, perpetual silver light. It had not just judged her, it had crowned her. The silence following the Valkyrie's howl was not peaceful. It was the stunned, breathless quiet that follows a clap of thunder. The white wolf Alara stood luminous upon the dais, the newly awakened moonstone casting a gentle glow upon her radiant fur. The kneeling crowd remained prostrate, the truth a physical weight upon their backs. King Kaelin rose first, his movement one of reverence and fierce pride. He took a step toward the dais, his eyes only for her. It was the moment Lady Seraphine chose to strike. While all attention was fixed on the miracle on the dais, Seraphine moved. She did not run. She slithered backwards through the kneeling nobles, a shadow detaching itself from the crowd. Her target was not Alara, not directly, her eyes. Wild with a blend of terror and feral spite, were fixed on the archway that led to the inner citadel. To the warren of secret passages only she, as the king's steward fully knew, Elder Magnus, his face still pressed to the stone, was the first to sense the wrongness. He lifted his head, his old eyes sharp. The traitor flees. He cried out, his voice cracking the silence. Commander Rylan was already in motion. A blur of black leather and fury, guard the queen. He roared to his men, even as he sprinted after the flaying form of Seraphine. Alara saw it all from her heightened perspective. The fear, the chaos, the betrayal, a new instinct. Cold and clear overrode the wonder of her transformation. This ends now, she moved. It was not a run, it was a leap that defied physics. One moment she was on the dais, the next. She was a streak of white light cutting across the courtyard. She landed directly in front of the narrow servants' archway, blocking it completely, her massive form filling the space. Her landing was silent, but the impact of her power was not. It shook the ground. Seraphine skidded to a halt, her heels scraping on stone. Mere inches from the wall of glowing white fur and bared silver fangs. She looked and Pinto the golden, intelligent eyes of the beast she had called a rat. All color drained from her face, Alara snarled. The sound was not animal, it was elemental. The growl of a glacier cracking off wind shearing rock. She lowered her head, her hot breath gusting over Seraphine, who flinched back with a whimper. "Please, your majesty," Seraphine stammered, the title tasting like ash on her tongue. "Mercy, I was misguided. I sought only to protect the throne from an unknown force." "You sought to protect your own power," a voice said. Cold as the mountain peak, Kalen walked up, standing beside his queen, a pillar of dark fury next to her luminous grace. "You tried to murder the heart of my kingdom in its crib. You do not deserve the air you breathe." Seraphine fell to her knees, thighs time not in reverence, but in abject terror. She clutched at the hem of Kalen's coat. "Exile. I will go into exile far from here. You will never see me again." Alara began to shift. The light folded in around her, warm and swift. And when it faded, stood in her human form. The simple linen dress now seeming like a queen's robe. Kalen was ready, draping his own heavy cloak over her shoulders. Her golden eyes still glowed with residual power. "You like poison, Lady Seraphine?" Alara asked, her voice unnervingly calm. "You like shadows and whispers, and making the helpless feel smaller, mercy." A Seraphine sobbed, a broken record of desperation. Alara looked past her to Commander Rylan. "The obsidian mines in the northern wastes. They still use manual labor to extract the ore, do they not?" "They do, me queen," Rylan answered, a grim satisfaction in his voice. "The work is punishing. Eternal night-crushing rock. The constant scent of cold stone and despair." "Perfect," Alara declared. The word was soft, but it carried to every ear in the courtyard. "Strip her of every title, every honor. Seize her assets, every coin, every jewel, and distribute them to the orphanages and sanctuaries for displaced Omegas across the realm. As she finally looked down at the weeping woman, "You, Seraphine, will spend the rest of your days digging in the dark. You will know what it is to be the lowest creature in the kingdom. You will earn the air you breathe." The guard surged forward, seizing Seraphine. Her screams, raw, ugly sounds of sheer panic, echoed against the courtyard walls as she was dragged away. Her fate sealed. But the night's justice was not yet complete. Alara's glowing gaze turned, sweeping across the crowd until it found them, huddled together near the back under heavy guard, were the former Alpha Brutushi's Luna Cordelia and their daughter Selene. They had been forced to watch the trial, to witness the ascension of the one they had tormented. Brutus seeing her attention treed to straighten his spine. A pathetic attempt at dignity. "Ilara," he called out, his voice too loud, too false. "Niece, see you have come into your own," the crowd gasped. Niece Kalen's growl was instantaneous. "You forfeited any claim of kinship when you condemned her to a frozen death." "I was protecting her." Brutus lied, sweat pouring down his temples. "If her true nature were known, every rogue in the realm would have hunted her. I kept her hidden, I gave her shelter when her parents died." Ilara walked toward him. The crowd parted before her like water. She stopped, close enough to see the fear in his eyes, to smell the sour stench of his deceit. "You are right, Brutus." She said, her voice clear and carrying. A flicker of hope ignited in his eyes. "You did give me shelter." He exhaled, a shaky smile forming. "Yes, you see. We are family, blood is blood. You gave me a shed with walls so thin the wind sang through them." Ilara continuator, voice hardening to diamond. "You gave me a blanket so riddled with lice I itched for years. You gave me the scraps from your table, gristle and mold, while you gorged on roasts." She lined in, her golden eyes blazing. "And last night, when I begged for 10 minutes of warmth from the storm you sent me into, you slammed the door in my face." Brutus's smile vanished, replaced by dawning horror. "I will not kill you, Brutus," Ilara announced, raising her voice so all could hear her decree. "Death is a kindness you do not deserve. You want to be part of my family, then you will live as I lived. You will know the life you gave me." She turned to Commander Rylan. "Escort the former Alpha and his family back to the Shadow Fang territory. They are not to set foot in the pack house. That house is now a sanctuary for the sick and the elderly of the region." "And where shall they live, my queen?" Rylan asked, knowing the answer. Ilara's smile was a winter flower, the shed commander. "I believe the roof still leaks. And the wind cuts right to the bone. They may have it, you can't." Selene shrieked, her beautiful face contorted. "We'll die, it's still winter." "Then I suggest you huddle close," Ilara said, turning her back on them, her final words drifting over her shoulder. "Body heat is a precious thing. And if you get hungry, I'm sure the garbage bins behind the sanctuary kitchen have something." You'll have to be quick, though, the rats are fierce. As Brutus and his family were dragged away, their wails joining the fading echoes of Seraphine's, a new sound rose in the grand courtyard. It started as a murmur, then a rumble, then a roaring. Triumphant cheer, warriors beat their chests. Nobles shouted her new title, the sound was deafening. A wave of acceptance and awe crashing over their white queen. Ilara felt the weight of it, the responsibility, the love. Her legs trembled, the immense energy of the night finally ebbing. She did not fall, Kalen was there, his arm sliding around her waist, holding her firmly against him. I have you, he whispered, his lips against her temple. Rest now, my heart, your first reign is over. And it was glorious as he led her away. Back toward the citadel, the cheers followed them. A promise and a blessing, the war for her place was won. But as Ilara leaned into Kalen's strength, her golden eyes scanned the celebrating crowd. The shadowed archways, towering citadel itself. A queen's work, she understood, was never truly done. 3 days of a profound, humming quiet that felt more unsettling than any storm. The onyx citadel had absorbed the shock of the Moonstone trial. The fall of Lady Seraphine, the rise of the White Queen. On the surface there was only deference, bows were deeper. Voices were softer, requests were phrased as pleas. Ilara stood on a high balcony, the same one from which she had first beheld the citadel's terrifying grandeur. Now, wrapped in a cloak of silver-white fur, a gift from Kalen to match her new station, she looked out not with fear, but with a quiet burgeoning sense of ownership. The spring sun was weak but persistent, fighting to melt the last stubborn patches of snow on the lower slopes. Kalen came to stand beside her, his presence a solid comfort. The reports from Silverwood Vale are in, he said. His voice a low rumble close to her ear, Shadow Fang. Ilara corrected, soft lithe old name tasting bitter. It is Silverwood Vale now. She had renamed it the day after the trial. Stripping Brutus's legacy from the land, Silverwood Vale. Kalen amended, a hint of a smile in his voice. The sanctuary is operational. The sick from 3 surrounding packs have already been brought in. The former residents of the shed, he continued, his tone turning flat, are alive. Frostbite took 2 of Brutus's toes. Selene was seen scrubbing pots in the sanctuary scullery for a scrap of bread. A complex knot of emotions tightened in Ilara's chest. Vengeance was not sweet, it was ash in her mouth. But justice had a clean, cold taste. Let them learn the weight of a loaf earned by their own hands. Oh, she said, her gaze distant, perhaps one day, when they understand the value of a kindness given freely. I will send them a proper blanket. You are merciful to a fault, me queen, Kalen murmured. Turning her to face him, his hands were warm on her arms. They do not deserve your thoughts. They are a lesson, she replied, meeting his stormy eyes. A lesson to the entire kingdom that no one, from the lowest omega to the highest alpha, is beneath compassion. And that cruelty will be met not with more cruelty, but with poetic justice, he chuckled, the sound warm. You will be the most formidable ruler this land has ever known. Their moment of peace was pierced by a polite, deliberate cough. They turned. In the doorway stood a man Alara had not seen before. He was older with sharp, intelligent features and hair the color of iron. He wore robes of deep blue note the gray of the High Council, and carried an air of quiet unquestioned authority. "Your Majesties," the man said, bowing precisely. "Forgive the intrusion, I am Lord Thuron, royal historian and keeper of the bloodlines." Alara felt Kaelin tense slightly beside her. "Thuron, you have news." The initial analysis from the unique biological samples provided by Dr. Aris is complete, Thuron said, his eyes flickering to Alara with a keen academic curiosity. "The findings are revolutionary." "And troubling how?" Alara asked, stepping forward. Thuron's gaze was piercing. "The Valkyrie lineage is not merely rare, Your Majesty. It is targeted. The binding on your power was no simple suppression spell. It was a hunter's mark woven with a specific, malicious signature. A signature we have encountered before." The sun on the balcony suddenly felt cold. "Encountered where?" Kaelin's voice was dangerously quiet. "In the archives of the Crimson Moon Massacre. 50 years ago, an entire bloodline, a minor noble house said to carry a dilute strain of ancient blood, was wiped out. The method was not claw or fang. It was a magical purge. The residual energy signature from that atrocity matches the lock placed on Queen Alara." Alara's hand went unconsciously to her chest, where the seal had shattered. "My parents." "We are cross-referencing now," Thuron said. "The official record states your parents were low-ranking Omegas killed in a wagon accident. But if they were in truth last scions of that purged house, hiding you was an act of desperation. Placing that binding on you may have been an attempt to cloak your light, to make you seem broken, unworthy of notice." The world tilted her entire life. Her identity as a defective Omgawa's a lie, a shield. Who? The word was a whisper. Who would do this? Who hunts the old blood? Thuron's expression was grave. "That, Your Majesties, is the question. The magic is sophisticated old, and deeply entwined with Lycan nobility. It suggests the enemy is not from without but within. Someone with access to forbidden arcana. Someone who has been purging the ancient lineages for generations, ensuring only controllable bloodlines remain near the throne." Kaelin's face was stone. Seraphine, she spoke of purity. She had the access, the motive. Perhaps, Thuron conceded. But she was a steward, not a sorceress. The magic we detected is of a far higher order. She may have been a tool. A willing one, but a tool nonetheless. The hand that guided hers remains in shadow. The piece of the balcony was gone, replaced by a chilling clarity. Her ascension was not an end. It was a declaration of war to a hidden enemy who had tried to erase her before she was even known. "Find them, Thuron," Kaelin commanded. His voice like grinding stone. use every resource. Scour every archive. Interrogate every captured sorcerer from the border skirmishes. This enemy has made 2 fatal errors. They failed to kill my queen. And now they have her attention, Thuron bowed. It will be done. As he turned to leave, he paused. There is one more thing, Your Majesty. He addressed Ilara. The magic that bound you, its breaking has sent a ripple through the world's mystical currents. Others of hidden blood may have felt it. They may be awakening. Or they may be in greater danger than ever. You are a beacon now for good and for ill. He left them alone on the balcony with the weight of his words. Ilara stared out at the kingdom's beautiful, treacherous landscape of her new home. I thought the fight was over, she murmured. Kaelin drew her back against his chest, his arms a fortress around her. The fight for your place is over, my love. The fight for your legacy, for the truth of your blood that has just begun. He rested his chin on her head. But you do not fight it alone. You have a king and an army. And a people who now see in you the dawn they had forgotten. She leaned into him, drawing strength from his certainty. The enemy was in the shadows. But she, Ilara, the White Queen, was made of moonlight. And moonlight, she realized, had a way of reaching even the darkest corners. A week of uneasy peace settled over the Onyx Citadel like a thin layer of frost. The court moved with a careful, watchful energy. Ilara spent her days in a whirlwind of new responsibilities, learning protocols. Meeting regional alphas, their awe and thinly veiled anxiety palpable. And beginning the monumental task of drafting the new laws for Omegas and the unranked. Kaelin was a constant steady presence at her side. His support unwavering, yet the revelation from Lord Thuron was a specter in every gilded corridor. The binding on her soul had been a hunter's mark. Someone had tried to erase her before she'd taken her first step. That knowledge turned every unfamiliar face into a potential enemy. Every shadow into a hiding place. It was during a formal, tedious meeting about grain tariffs in the lesser hall that the specter made itself known. A young page, his face pale, scurried into the room and whispered frantically into Commander Ryland's ear. Ryland's scarred face, usually impassive, tightened. He moved swiftly to Kaelin's side, bending low. Your Majesties, he murmured, his voice for their ears only. A delegation from the Sylvanus Grove. Kaelin went still. Ilara felt the subtle tension coil through his arm where it rested on the throne's arm beside hers. The Grove sends no delegations, he said. His voice low and flat. They are recluses. Guardians of the old woods. They have sent one now, sire, Rylan insisted. A single emissary, he is at the outer gate. He bears their sigil and he asks for an audience with the star-touched queen. Star-touched, the ancient term for Valkyrie lineage. Ilara's breath caught. This was no casual visit, admit him. Kaelin commanded, his voice regaining its steel. To the private solar. And double the guard on every entrance to this wing. The tariff meeting was adjourned with abrupt royal prerogative. Minutes later, Ilara and Kaelin sat in the intimate Book-lined solar fire crackling, the door opened. And the emissary from Sylvanus Grove entered. He was not what Alara expected. He was tall and slender, with hair the pale greenish silver of willow bark and eyes the color of moss after rain. His clothes were simple, woven from what looked like living vines and cured leaves. Yet they moved with an elegance that spoke of immense age and power. He carried a staff of twisted dark wood, and his scent was of damp earth-deep forests, and something utterly alien to Lycan senses. He bowed a fluid, graceful motion, King Kaelan Thorn. Queen Alara, his voice was soft like wind through leaves. I am Kaelan, speaker for the Sylvanus Grove. We felt the shattering of the great bind. We have come to see the star-touched who walks among wolves. His words were not hostile, but they held no warmth. Only a deep, ancient scrutiny. Why now? Kaelan asked, not offering a seat. His tone was guarded, every inch the protective alpha. The Grove has ignored Lycan affairs for centuries. The affairs of wolves are yours, Kaelan agreed. His mossy eyes fixed on Alara. But the affairs of magic, of the old blood, these touch the roots of the world. The binding on your queen was not Lycan work. It was Fae craft. The word dropped into the room like a stone. Fae. Beings of the deep, wild, older than kingdoms, who dealt in glamours and curses and bargains. They were myths, bedtime stories to warn children from straying into the wrong parts of the forest. Fae, Alara repeated, the word feeling strange on her tongue. Why would the Fae care about a Lycan bloodline? Not a bloodline, Kaelan corrected gently. The bloodline, the Valkyrie, were not just Lycan. They were Brejes, children of the moon and the distant stars, touched by celestial magic. That magic is anathema to a certain faction of the unseelie court. They fear what they cannot control. They have worked for ages to prune the world of such wild, unbiddable power. Lord Thuron's theory crystallized into a terrifying new shape. The enemy wasn't just within the Lycan nobility. It was an ancient, external force that had found willing hands to do its work. The one who placed the bind, Alara said, her voice steady despite the tremor in her soul. A Lycan did it. I felt it break here in this kingdom. Kaelan nodded, a vessel, a Lycan noble. Promised power or longevity or some other trinket. Who allowed a Fae sorcerer to work through them? The signature is a blend. The intent is pure unseelie, to stifle do corrupt. To make bright things dull, do you know who? Kaelan's question was a blade, the specific vessel no. The scent is faded, masked by years and stronger magics. But the source we know of him. He is a lord of the withering frost. A prince of forgotten grudges, he is called Morwen. Why reveal this? Alara asked, searching the Fae emissary's impassive face. Why break your silence? Kaelan's gaze held hers, and for a moment saw not an alien creature, but a being of immensuary patience. Because the breaking of your bind was not a quiet event. It was a clarion call. Morwen knows he failed. And he will not fail twice. He will come for you, star-touched. Or he will send his vessels. The grove does not take sides in the wars of shifting kingdoms. But we stand against the blight of the unsaily. We offer you knowledge and a warning. He stepped forward and placed a small, smooth object on the table between them. It was a river stone, perfectly oval with a single, natural hole through its center, a seeing stone. If the touch of unseelie magic comes near you, the same magic that bound you, it will grow cold. Bitterly cold, it is a small thing. But it may grant you a moment's warning where you would have none. Ilara picked up the stone, it was warm from Kaelan's hand, and hummed with a faint green energy. "Thank you," she said genuinely. Kaelan bowed again. "Guard your light, Queen Ilara, the world has need of it. And the shadows have always hated the dawn." With that, he turned and left as silently as he had arrived, leaving behind the scent of forests and a chilling new reality. Kaelan was at her side instantly, his hand covering hers around the stone. "Faye," he growled the word a curse. Ilara looked at the stone, then at the fire, then at her king. "It changes nothing and everything," she said softly. "The enemy has a name, Morwen, and a nature. He is not just a rival alpha, he is something other. And he's been poisoning our world from the inside for generations." She closed her fingers around the seeing stone. It remained warm for now, but he made one mistake, Kaelan. "Oh," she said, and a flicker of her Valkyrie's fire ignited in her golden eyes. "He didn't just bind a helpless Omega, he bound a queen. And now that queen knows his name." Knowledge was a heavy crown. The name Morwen echoed in Ilara's mind, a chilling whisper beneath the daily roar of kingship. The warm humming seeing stone never left her person, tucked into a small velvet pouch tied securely at her waist. A silent, vigilant sentinel, its constant, gentle warmth was both a comfort and a reminder. The threat was real. And it was watching. Her days became a deliberate performance of normalcy. Laced with invisible tension, she presided over courts. Her judgments fair and often merciful, earning the cautious admiration of her people. She worked with Kaelan and Lord Thuron in secret, cross-referencing noble lineages with historical accidents and mysterious declines, searching for the trail of Morwen's influence. The enemy was a ghost, a poison in the bloodline of the realm itself. It was during a public audience, a routine hearing of border disputes, that the stone's warmth vanished. Ilara was listening to a grizzled northern alpha argue over fishing rights when a sudden, sharp cold pierced through her dress and seared her skin at her hip. It was so intense, so shocking. It felt like being stabbed with an icicle. She gasped, her hand flying to her side. Kaelan, ever attuned to her, was instantly alert. Ilara. The cold was already fatingleaving behind a deep, aching numbness. The audience hall was full, nobles, petitioners, guards. Dozens of faces, any one of them could be the vessel, carrying a whisper of Morwen's touch. I am well." She managed forcing a calm she did not feel into her voice. "A momentary chill, please continue." She locked eyes with Kaelan and gave a tiny, almost imperceptible shake of her head, not here, not now. The audience dragged on, every second an agony. Ilara's senses were heightened, stretched, taut. She scanned the crowd but saw only the usual mix of deference, curiosity and petty grievance. The unseelie taint, it seemed, left no visible mark. The moment the session was adjourned, Kaelin whisked her away to their private chambers. Commander Rylan followed, closing the doors and standing before them like a vault. "What happened?" Kaelin's voice was tight with controlled fear. Wordlessly, Ilara pulled the pouch from her waist and tipped the seeing stone into her palm. It lay there inert, a simple gray stone. But when she held it out to Kaelin, he flinched back. "By the moon," he breathed, he took it gingerly. The moment it touched his skin hissed. Dropping it onto a thick rug, it's not just cold. It's hateful, it feels like despair. Ilara picked it up again, to her it was now just cold. The active malevolence was meant for the one it warned. He was here in the hall, or something of his was. Rylan's jaw tightened. "I will have the guards review the roster of every person in that chamber. Cross-reference with known associates of Seraphine. With families who have suffered mysterious losses." "It won't be obvious, Rylan," Ilara said, her voice weary. "This enemy hides in plain sight. It could be a guard you trust, a noble who bows the deepest." She looked at the stone, her resolve hardening. "We cannot live in a fortress of fear, suspecting everyone." "We must be smarter than fear," Kaelin said, pulling her to sit beside him on a couch. He kept her hand tightly in his. "We have two advantages. First, we know he will come for you, he cannot help it. His nature demands it." "Second," he said, lifting her chin so her golden eyes met his, "he has no idea what you are truly capable of. He remembers the bound Omega, he does not know the Queen." A plan began to form in Ilara's mind, delicate and dangerous. "Then we must show him," she whispered, "but on our terms. We need to draw the vessel out to make them overreach." Kaelin's eyes narrowed. "A risk?" "A calculated one," she insisted. "We announce a progress. A royal tour of the outer territories. To show the new queen to her people. We make it public, predictable. We move with less guard than usual. A show of confidence and connection." "You would make yourself a target," Rylan stated, horror and admiration warring in his tone. "I am the target, Commander," Ilara replied. "Better the snake strikes where we choose the ground, than where it finds a crack in our walls here at home." She looked at Kaelin, pleading for his understanding. "We cannot find him by looking, we must make him come to us." Kaelin was silent for a long moment. His stormy eyes searching hers, he saw the fear eyes. But beneath eyes saw the steel of the Valkyrie. The warrior who had faced a blizzard for strangers. He let out a slow breath. "We go to the Starfall Plains," he said decisively. "It is open ground, sacred to the old tales. It is also remote, if Morwen's puppet is among the court. They will see it as the perfect opportunity, the new queen. Vulnerable far from the citadel's strength." A grim smile touched his lips. We will just ensure we are not as vulnerable as we appear." The decision was made. The royal progress was announced to great fanfare. The kingdom buzzed with excitement at the chance to see their legendary White Queen. Ilara prepared, her heart a drum of anxiety and resolve. She practiced not just protocol but the feel of her power. The shift that was still new and wondrous. She remembered the Fae emissary's words, "Guard your light." She would do more than guard it, she would use it as a beacon. And as a trap the night before their departure. She stood on the balcony once more. The seeing stone in her pouch was warm again. The immediate danger passed. But the memory of its bite was a brand on her soul. Kalen joined her, wrapping his arms around her from behind. "Are you certain?" he murmured into her hair. She leaned back into his strength, her eyes on the countless stars above. "I am certain that hiding will not save us. I am certain that this enemy wants me to be afraid. To be small again." She turned in his arms, her face fierce in the moonlight. "I refuse, let him come, let all the shadows come. I am the star-touched queen. And I will not go quietly into the night." The royal procession was a ribbon of color and steel winding through the greening valleys below the mountains. Banners bearing the united crests of the onyx throne and the Valkyrie's Munin sword snapped in the brisk spring wind. From a distance, it looked like a pageant of power and celebration. From within, it was a carefully orchestrated snare. Ilara rode beside Kalen on a calm green, her posture regal in a riding habit of deep blue. She smiled and waved at the packs who gathered in small villages to watch them pass, her heart swelling at their genuinely Westruck cheers. Yet her senses were stretched as tight as a bowstring. The seeing stone nestled against her skin was her focal point. A silent oracle she checked with her mind 100 times an hour. So far it remained stubbornly, blessedly warm. Commander Rylan rode just ahead, his eyes constantly scanning the tree lines, the rocky outcrops, the faces in the crowds. The guard was lighter than for a formal citadel event. But each warrior was hand-picked. Their loyalty unquestionable, their skills lethal. They were wolves pretending to be a ceremonial escort. On the third day, they reached the edge of the Starfall Plains. The land opened up into a vast rolling expanse of tall, silver-green grass dotted with ancient, solitary standing stones. The sky here seemed bigger, the air sharper. It was a place of whispers and old magic. The legends say stars fell here long ago. Kalen said quietly, reining his horse close to hers, that their light soaked into the earth. And that's why the grass glows under the full moon. It is a place of power for both of us and for others. Ilara nodded, feeling the truth of it. The air hummed against her skin, a sympathetic vibration to the power sleeping in her own blood. It felt like coming home to a home she'd never known. "We make camp by the Three Sisters," she said, pointing to a cluster of the largest standing stones. As planned, the camp was set with efficient quiet. Tents erected, perimeter guards posted, fires lit. As dusk fell, painting the plains in shades of lavender and gold, Ilara felt it, a flutter of cold. Not the searing stab from the audience hall, but a delicate, probing chill against her hip, like the brush of a moth's frozen wing. It was gone in an instant. Her eyes met Kaelin's across the fire. He saw the slight widening of her eyes, the subtle intake of breath. The bait had been taken. The predator was circling the camp. The night deepened. A near full moon rose, bathing the plains in milky light, making the grass truly seem to shimmer. Ilara announced her fatigue and retired to the royal tent. Inside, she did not change into sleeping clothes. She stood in the dark, listening. The camp settled into the rhythmic sounds of night watch, the soft tread of boots, the occasional low murmur. An hour passed, then another. The cold returned. This time it was not a flutter. It was a grip. A hand of ice clamping down on the stone through the fabric of her pouch. So fierce the pain stole her breath. It was close. Very close. Thina knew sound, a soft melodic humming, just outside the rear canvas wall of her tent. It was a lullaby, sweet and sorrowful, one she faintly remembered from the haziest edges of childhood. A song no one in this camp, not even Kaelin, could know. Her blood ran colder than the stone. It was a lure, personal and vicious. She knew the plan. She was to wait to let the guards intercept. But this was a hook sunk into her very soul. The enemy wasn't just attacking the queen. He was taunting the orphaned child she had been. Gripping the now agonizingly cold stone in one hand, Ilara used the other to silently unsheath the obsidian dagger, the one left in the shed by the black wolf. By Rylan, its familiar weight was a comfort. With a swift, silent motion, she slit a seam in the tent wall and slipped out into the moonlit night. The humming stopped 20 paces away, standing between two of the smaller standing stones was a figure. It was not a monstrous fey creature. It was a Lycan woman. She was older, dressed in the simple, elegant robes of a mid-ranked noble from a western territory. Her face was kind, grandmotherly. But her eyes, they reflected the moonlight with a hollow, silver sheen that was not Lycan at all. Little star. The woman crooned at her voice, still holding that melodic, terrible sweetness. You came, he said you would. You always were a curious child. Ilara's heart hammered. Who are you? A friend of your mother's, the woman said, taking a step forward. Her scent was wrong. Beneath lavender soap was the cloying, rotten sweet smell of enchanted decay. I held you when you were a babe. I was there when they placed the pretty little lock on your light, to keep you safe, but you broke it, naughty thing. This was the vessel. A Lycan noble, utterly consumed by Morwen's will. You're not my friend, Ilara said, her voice gaining strength. The cold from the stone was a focused agony, a compass pointing directly at this corrupted soul. You're his puppet. The woman's kindly smile twisted into something grotesque. Puppet, I am blessed. He showed me such beautiful, cold truths. He showed me how to prune the garden. Her hand lifted, and Ilara saw her fingers were tipped with nails grown long and sharp like black icicles. He wants you back, little star, not dead quiet. As you were, he wants to finish the binding himself. A shadow detached itself from behind a standing stone. Then another, two more figures. Their EYES Chinese letter shining with that same hollow silver. They had infiltrated the camp. They had gotten past the guards, now the old woman hissed. Her voice dropping all pretense becoming a guttural. Multitonal echo, come here child, they lunged. Alara didn't scream. She dropped the pouch with the frozen stone and reached inside. Not for a weapon but for the power, the Valkyrie's fire. It answered in a torrent, light pure and fierce. Erupted from her skin not as a shockwave but as a cloak. A mantle of brilliant white flame. The three vessels recoiled, shrieking as the light seared their unsteely touched senses. She is revealed, the old woman screeched. Her voice now fully Morwen's instrument, the star burns. From the camp a roar shook the night, Kaelin. In his full Lycan form, a colossal beast of shadow and fury, exploded from his tent. Royal guards not surprised but ready. Surged from hiding places. Engaging other silver-eyed infiltrators who rose from the grass. The plains erupted into chaos, but around Alara. There was a circle of blazing light and terrified. Hissing vassals. The old woman gathered herself, her body contorting. He will have you, she screamed and launched herself. Black claws aimed for Alara's heart. Alara didn't dodge. As she met the charge, she shifted. It was faster now, seamless. One moment a woman wrapped in light next. The great white wolf meeting the corrupted Lycan mid-leap. Jaws of silver snapped, claws of light raked. There was no contest. The Valkyrie's power tore through the unseelie magic like paper. The old woman felt silver light dying from her eyes, leaving only the empty face of a used-up vessel. The other two turned to fly, only to be met by Kaelin's wrath and Ryland's swift sword. As quickly as it began, it was over. The infiltrators lay still, the night was silent again. Save for the heavy breathing of the guards and the crackle of Alara's slowly fading light. She shifted back, stumbling as the adrenaline ebbed. Kaelin was therein human form catching her. His own body trembling with post-battle fury and relief. You were supposed to wait, he growled. But it was filled with fear not anger. He sang my mother's song, she whispered. Burying her face in his chest, he held her tighter. Rylan approached, his face grim. They wore the faces of the Amberleaf family. Reported lost in a landslide a year ago. Morwen, he doesn't just use the willing, he steals the lost. Alara looked at the peaceful, empty face of the old woman. A victim as much as a weapon. The cost of this hidden war was more terrible than she had imagined. She pulled away from Kaelin and walked to where her pouch lay. The seeing stone had tumbled out, she picked it up. It was warm again, the immediate threat was gone. But as she held it, staring at the three sisters' stones silhouetted against the moon, she knew this was not a victory, it was a skirmish. Morwen had tested his enemy's strength, and she had revealed a fraction of hers. The hunt was no longer one-sided, the queen was on the field. and the unseelie prince now knew the taste of her light. The return to the onyx citadel was not a victory procession. It was a summer-swift march, the air thick with the scent of blood-burnt magic and grim resolve. The bodies of the corrupted, the stolen faces of the Amberleaf family were carried in shrouded litters. They were not traitors to be displayed. They were tragedies to be investigated. Their remains studied by Lord Thuron and his mystics for any clue that might lead them closer to Morwen. Ilara moved through the days in a state of hollowed-out focus. The kind, twisted face of the old woman haunted her dreams. He sang my mother's song, the violation was profound. A poison seeping into the few precious memories she had clung to. Her sanctuary of self was breached. Kaelin was a fortress of quiet support. But even his presence could not dispel the new, chilling understanding. Morwen did not just want her dead or bound. He wanted to unmake her too, strip her history or identity, and reshape it into a weapon of despair. A week after their return, Lord Thuron requested a private audience in the deepest archives. A room lined with light to contain magical resonances. Ilara and Kaelin found him there, looking older than his years, surrounded by scrolls and strangely humming instruments. The analysis is disturbing, Thuron began, dispensing with pleasantries. He pointed to a complex diagram etched in silver on a black slate. The corruption in the vessels was a puppet string magic. But the core, the command signal, we managed to isolate a residual echo from the moment of their severance at Starfall. He activated a small crystal orb. A sound filled the light-lined room. It was not a voice, but a presence, a feeling of immense Aegioff creeping frost, of boundless silent malice, and within thought a single, clear intention. A thought echo captured at the moment the old woman fell. What? The well of sorrows, the child's light will drown there and bloom for me. The echo faded, leaving the room colder. Ilara wrapped her arms around herself. The well of sorrows, what is that? Thuron's face was pale. A legend, a place if it exists off such concentrated negative emotion, grief, regret, terror, that it has crystallized into a physical location, a font of corrupt power. It is said to be a place where the veil between our world and the darkest reaches of the unseelie realm is tissue thin. If Morwen wants to drown your light there, he trailed off. The implication too terrible. He doesn't want to kill me. Ilara said, her voice flat with realization. He wants to invert me. To take the Valkyrie's power, the power of protection, of celestial light, and corrupt it into something for his court. A weapon of frozen despair. Kaelin's fist slammed on the table, making the instruments jump. Then we find this well first. We destroy it if it can be found, Thuron cautioned. And if it can be approached without being consumed by the very sorrows that feed it. It is a place that preys on the heart. Ilara stared at the now dark crystal orb. Morwen's plan was clearer and more horrifying. He wasn't just pruning a bloodline. He was attempting the ultimate alchemy, turning a force for good into an engine of eternal winter. That night, Ilara could not sleep. She left Kaelin slumbering and walked to the high balcony. The seeing stone was warm at her waist. The citadel slept below, peaceful in its ignorance. She felt the weight of the secret of the coming storm. A soft footfall sounded behind her. She didn't turn. She knew the scent, pine and steel, Commander Rylan. "My queen," he said quietly, coming to stand beside her. "Respecting her solitude, you carry the burden alone." "You should not. I am the target, Rylan. The burden is mine by design." "You are also the hope," he countered, his voice firm. "What you did on the plains, the men. They don't just follow you because the king commands it. They saw your light. They saw you stand against a terror they did not understand. That is a different kind of loyalty. It is a shield you do not yet know you have." She looked at him. "This fear." Loyal warrior who had once been a wolf she saved from a blizzard. "Morwen wants to turn my light to darkness. He wants to use me against everything I would protect." Rylan nodded, his scarred face grim in the moonlight. "Then we must ensure your light burns too brightly to be touched by any well. No matter how deep its sorrow," he hesitated. "There is a training ground in the mountains. A place where the first kings harnessed their bond with the moon. It is a place of pure, undiluted lunar energy. If any place could strengthen your connection to your power, armor it against corruption, it would be there." The moonlit eyrie, a spark ignited in Alara's chest. Not just defense, not just waiting for the next attack. "Strength, can we go there? It is perilous. The energy is raw. It can break a weak spirit as easily as empower a strong one." Alara turned fully to him, her golden eyes gleaming. "I have been broken before, Commander. By cold, by hunger, by cruelty. I was remade in a shed with 25 wolves. I was forged in the fire of the moonstone. I am not afraid of raw power. I am afraid of being too weak to protect what is mine." A slow, proud smile touched Rylan's lips. "Then I will speak to the king. We will go to the eyrie." As he left, Alara looked back at the stars. The Well of Sorrows was a potential grave for her soul. The moonlit eyrie was a risk, a potential forge. She knew her choice. A queen did not hide from storms. She learned to command the wind. She would go to the mountain. She would meet the moon's full fury. And she would emerge not just as a beacon, but as a sword. The journey to the moonlit eyrie was a pilgrimage in silence. No banners, no procession, only King Kale and Queen Alara. Commander Rylan and a dozen of the most elite. Silent guards who moved like ghosts through the high pine forests. The air grew thinner, colder. The path was not a path at all, but a treacherous climb up a sheer rock face known only to the royal line and its most trusted protectors. After a day of arduous ascent, they reached it, a natural amphitheater carved into the very peak of the mountain. The ground was smooth polished stone, silver gray and etched with ancient, swirling runes that pulsed with a faint light. There was no vegetation, no shelter, just stone ski. And an overwhelming, pressing silence that was not an absence of sound, but a presence, the deep resonant hum of the moon's own power, stored in the rock for millennia. This was not a place for kings and queens. This was a place for primal forces. The airy, Ryland said, his voice hushed. The energy gathers here. Thickest on the 3 nights lighting to the full moon. Tonight is the first. He looked at Alara, his expression grave. To engage with it, you must be vulnerable. You must open yourself completely. There are no guards here against its power. It will show you everything. Kaelin's hand found Alara's, his grip tight. You do not have to do this, we can find another way. Alara looked at the charged air, visible as a shimmering silver haze. She felt it calling to the core of her. The Valkyrie blood singing in answer. There is no other way. He fights with stolen grief and frozen sorrow. I must fight with light that knows its own strength. I must be sure. She stepped forward into the center of the amphitheater. The moment her boots touched the central rune, the world changed, the hum became a roar, silver light. Cold and pure and alive erupted from the runes in the floor, shooting up in columns that joined in a shimmering dome above her. She was inside a crucible of moonlight. And the visions began, not of Morwen, not of the future. Of her, she saw the shed knot from her own memory. But from outside, seeing her own small, desperate figure dragging wolves twice her size through the snow. She felt the staggering weight of her compassion, a physical force that brought her to her knees on the stone. She saw the moonstone trial, felt the terror of the freezing void, and then the cataclysmic, glorious joy of her true form breaking free. The ecstasy was as overwhelming as the fear. She saw the old woman on the Starfall plains. But now she felt not just the violation, but the woman's own stolen grief, her lost family. The hollow ache Morwen had filled with his icy promises. The sorrow was a tidal wave threatening to drown her. You are all of these, a voice seemed to whisper on the light. The compassion, the fear, the joy, the sorrow. The weak, the strong, the victim, the queen, which are you? I am all of it. Ilara cried out, her voice lost in the roar of power. Tears streamed down her face, freezing instantly in the luminous energy. The pain does not make me weak. It tells me what is worth fighting for. The fear does not make me a coward. It makes my courage a choice. The light pressed in, a physical weight. It sought her doubts, her secret shames, the times she had wished for death in the shed. The flicker of pride when Selene cowered before her. The terrifying love for Kaelin that felt like a weakness an enemy could exploit. She did not hide them. She laid them bare before the moon's judgment. This is my strength, she screamed into the maelstrom. Not in spite of the cracks, but because of them. The light does not flow through a perfect vessel. It shines from the breaks for a moment. The pressure intensified, threatening to shatter her mind. Then, with a sound like a crystal bell, it shifted. The invasive, judging light became an embrace. It flowed into her not to test but to fill. It coursed through her veins not as a foreign power, but as a recognition. The runes on the floor blazed, and their light transferred onto her skin. etching the same ancient swirling patterns across her arms. Her brow, glowing softly through her clothes before fading to a faint silver tracery. The dome of light dissolved. The roaring quieted to the deep hum. Alara stood in the center, breathing heavily. She felt solid, real, as if she had been a sketch before. And now was a statue carved from moonlight and mountain. The power inside her was not a separate, wild thing. It was her, tempered, focused, unbreakable. She turned. Kaelin and Rylan were on their knees at the edge of the stone. The guards prostrate behind them. Their faces were not filled with awe for a spectacle, but with reverence for a transformation. Alara walked to them, her steps sure on the stone. She knelt before Kaelin, taking his face in her hands. The silver tracery on her skin pulsed once, softly. "I am yours," she said, her voice clear and resonant. "And I am mine, and I am ready." He pulled her into an embrace that spoke of fear overcome, of love that was now a bedrock, not a vulnerability. "What did it show you?" he whispered. "It showed me my reflection," she said, pulling back to look into his eyes. "And I am not afraid of it anymore. Morwen wants to drown my light in sorrow. He does not understand. My light is made from the night. It does not fear the dark, it defines it." She stood, helping Kaelin to his feet. She looked at Rylan, at the loyal guards. "We return to the citadel. The time for hiding, for reacting, is over." Her golden eyes, always bright now, held the steady, unforgiving glow of a honed blade. "We know his goal, the Well of Sorrows. We will not wait for him to take me there." She smiled, and it was the most formidable expression any of them had ever seen. "We will take the fight to him." The planning room in the Onyx Citadel was a map of shadows and resolve. Parchments depicting the wild, unmapped northern wastes where the Well of Sorrows was rumored to lie were spread across the great table. Lord Thuron, Commander Rylan, King Kaelin, and Queen Alara stood around it. A council of war under a single burning purpose. The legends place the well in the shattered veil. Thuron Sedhai's finger tracing a jagged crack on the map. A place where a great Lycan hero of the Valkyrie age fell in despair. His grief said to have poisoned the land. The veil is thin. The way is treacherous, guarded by natural horrors and echoes. Kaelin asked, his voice a low growl, emotional remnants. Manifestations of the sorrow that feeds the well. They can drive the unprepared mad with their own regrets. Thuron explained, his eyes lingering on Alara. Alara studied the map, the new silver tracery on her skin seeming to faintly glow as she focused. "Morwen will be expecting me to come eventually. Lured or captured. He will not be expecting us to bring an army to his sacred font of corruption. An army cannot march into the shattered veil." Rylan stated flatly, "The paths are too narrow. The psychic pressure too great for ordinary warriors. It would be a slaughter before we saw a single unseelie." "Then we do not bring an army," Alara said, looking up. Her gaze was calm, strategic. "We bring a spear. A small, sharp force, Kaelin, Rylan, Thuron, myself. A dozen of your very best commander." those with the strongest mental fortitude. We move fast and quiet, we are not there to siege the well. We are there to destroy it, Kaelin's jaw tightened. To walk into his strongest place with so few is the only way, Alara finished. He uses fear and sorrow as weapons. We will counter with unity and purpose. My light is tempered now. I believe I can shield our small group at least for a time from the Veil's worst effects. And while I hold his attention, you and Rylan find the physical heart of the well, the crystallized source. Destroy that and you collapse the font, severing his connection to that power and likely wounding him deeply. It is a colossal risk, Thuron breathed. But his eyes shone with a scholar's fervor. To witness such a convergence of primal forces. It is the only move left on the board, Alara said. She placed her hand over the map, over the shattered veil. We end this not as victims of a hidden war, but as the ones who bring the dawn. 2 weeks of frantic, secret preparation followed. The chosen guards underwent grueling mental conditioning. Rylan drilled them in close-quarters combat in impossible terrain. Thuron prepared charms and wards, though he admitted their power would be limited against the well's ancient malice. Finally, under a new moon, the darkest night, the spear slipped from the citadel. 18 figures, cloaked in shadow silk that drank the light, moving like ghosts into the cursed north. The journey was a descent into a waking nightmare. The air grew thick and heavy, tasting of metal and tears. Whispers coiled from the rocks, voices that sounded like lost loved ones calling names. Pleading, accusing, the very landscape seemed to weep. With thin, acidic streams cutting through stone that bore faces frozen in anguish. Alara walked at the front, a soft, steady silver light emanating from her. A bubble of calm in the psychic storm. Her tracery glowed brightly. A countermelody to the veil's dirge when a guard stumbled, haunted by the echo of a fallen comrade's voice. Her light would pulse washing over him, bringing him back with a gasp. She was their lighthouse in a sea of sorrow. After 3 torturous days they found it. The shattered veil ended in a sheer cliff, and in its face was a cavernous opening. Weeping icicles of black stone. From within flowed not water but a thick, shimmering mist that pulsed with a slow sickly rhythm. It was the color of a bruise, and the sound that emanated from it was a symphony of every heartbreak in the world. The Well of Sorrows. Before the entrance, waiting, stood a figure. He was tall and graceful with beauty so sharp it cut the eyes. Hair like spun frost, eyes like chips of a frozen, a starless sky. He wore armor of intricate, thorn-like black ice. Prince Morwen of the Unsaily Court, he held no weapon. He was the weapon, little star. His voice was the cracking of glacial ice. Melodious and utterly lifeless. You brought your candles to my darkness, how thoughtful. The psychic pressure spiked. A wave of despair so potent 2 guards cried out. Dropping to their knees, Alara's light flared. A brilliant shield pushing back against the tide. This ends here, Morwen, Kaelin's snarled, shifting partially. Claws erupting from his hands. Oh, it will, Morwen agreed, his gaze never leaving Alara. She will step into my well. Her light will be the final, perfect ingredient. A Valkyrie's hope. Drowned and distilled into eternal winter, he smiled. You can watch, Wolf King, it will be the last thing you see. No, Alara said, her voice ringing with a clarity that silenced the weeping cavern. I did not come to be your ingredient. I came to tear down your kitchen. She moved, not toward him, but past him toward the weeping entrance of the well. Kaelin Rylan the heart now. As she predicted, Morwen's focus snapped entirely to her. She was the prize with a sound of shattering air. He lunged for her, his form blurring into a whirlwind of biting frost and shadow. Alara met him not with a blast of light but with a sphere of it. She planted her feet at the very mouth of the well, the bruise-colored mist coiling around her legs. And she shone. She became the embodiment of the moonlit Ares forge, not an attacking beam, but an immovable, brilliant bastion. Morwen's icy claws raked against her luminous shield. Screeching unable to penetrate, foolish child. You stand in the font of despair, your hope is fuel here. A Morwen screamed, his beautiful face contorting with rage as he hammered against her light. Behind him Kaelin and Rylan, shielded by her defiant glow, plunged into the side caverns of the well, following Thuron's frantic directions, hunting for the physical core. Inside the light, Alara felt it. The sorrow seeped in not as an attack but as an offer. It showed her visions, Kaelin falling the citadel in ruins, herself alone again in the shed forever. The despair was a palpable weight begging her to give in. To let the light go out and rest in the cold, she saw it all. And she smiled. You misunderstand, she whispered, her voice carrying through her light to Morwen's stunned ears. My hope is not ignorant of sorrow, it is forged in it, this. Oh, she gestured at the swirling mist. Is just more fuel for my fire. She didn't push him away. She pulled the light in tight around her, making it burn hotter, witter, purer. The mist recoiled. The very stones of the well began to steam and crack. From deep within the cavern a deafening crack echoed, followed by a wave of release that felt like the world taking a breath it had held for centuries. Kaelin and Rylan had found the heart, a giant, pulsing geode of black crystal, and shattered it. Morwen shrieked, a sound of true pain, his form flickered, the thorny ice of his armor beginning to melt and drip. The connection was severed. His power source was crumbling. No, it is mine, he roared, throwing his entire being into a final, desperate lunge at Alara, no longer to capture, but to destroy. Alara did not raise a shield. She opened her hands and she shifted, but not into the white wolf, into something more. A being of condensed moonlight and winged fury. A vision from the oldest tapestries, the true Valkyrie form. She was a silhouette of radiant power. A sword of starlight in her hand, she met his lunge. Starlight pierced glacial ice, there was no explosion. A silent, blinding flash, then stillness. The bruise-colored mist vanished. dissipating into harmless vapor. The weeping of the cavern stopped. The oppressive weight lifted, leaving only the clean, cold air of a northern night. Marwyn was gone. Not dead, a Fey prince was not so easily destroyed, but unmade in this place. Banished back to his frozen realm. Wounded and severed from his greatest weapon. The Valkyrie form Fade-denned Alara stood humanswaying. The silver tracery on her skin blazing like captured stars before slowly fading to a gentle, permanent glow. Kaelin was there catching her. His arms the only thing keeping her upright, Rylan Thuron. And the guards emerged weary but unbroken. Their eyes wide with what they had witnessed. Alara looked up at the sky through the opening of the veil. For the first time in centuries, the true stars were visible. Sharp and clean. It's over, she breathed. Kaelin kissed her forehead, his own eyes shining. No, my love, it is just beginning. The dawn is yours. They walked out of the shattered veil not as survivors, but as conquerors. The hidden war was won. The well of sorrows was a dry, silent scar. And ahead of them lay not just a kingdom, but an era. The golden age of the White Queen had truly, finally begun. Like, subscribe, and comment for part 2.